I never thought moving to a quiet, gated neighborhood would end in someone getting slapped. But then again, I'd never met Karen. The kind of woman who wore pastel blouses and spoke in brittle politeness that cracked the moment something didn't go her way. I moved into Westbrook Glen just 3 weeks ago. No announcement, no realtor signs. Just a black Escalade pulling into the largest estate on the cul-de-sac and a petite black woman, me, stepping out. I wasn't trying to make a splash. I just wanted some peace. But peace apparently wasn't part of the HOA bylaws. It started with glances, then whispers, then concerned knocks. First about my mailbox being too modern, then about my lawn guy showing up past 6. And then, on a sticky Thursday afternoon, Karen decided to take things one step further. I was on the phone, pacing my own driveway, when she stomped across her lawn in a fury I didn't see coming. She jabbed her finger in my face, screaming something about my car being an eyesore and bringing down the look of the street. I tried to stay calm. I really did. But when I reminded her that my name was the one on the deed, she snapped. Just like that, her hand swung across my cheek, and then the whole neighborhood got quiet. No one said a word, but everyone was watching. She didn't know, not yet, that I wasn't just some renter or some +1. I owned the place, not just the house, the entire block, including the HOA. But I'll get to that. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and stick around, because this story, it's just getting started. Karen's slap didn't sting half as much as the silence that followed. It wasn't the kind of silence you get when people are shocked. It was the kind you get when they're waiting, watching, wondering what I'd do. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, hand on my cheek, eyes on hers, and I watched her expression change, because something in my calm made her nervous. "Oh, please," she snapped, trying to wave it off. She hadn't just assaulted me in front of half the cul-de-sac. You people are always so dramatic. There it was, and yet, still, I said nothing. I just turned, walked inside, and shut my front door. She didn't know my assistant was filming the whole thing from the front steps. She didn't know that footage would be on 3 lawyer desks and 1 local news station by nightfall. But more importantly, she didn't know who I was. That was about to change, because the next day, I showed up to the HOA meeting. Quiet room. Cold stares. Karen was already there, holding court like she always did. Paperwork clutched in her hands like a baton, nodding smugly at her tiny chorus of suburban sycophants. The second she saw me walk in, her face twisted. "You don't belong here," she said, loud enough for the board to hear. I walked right past her, didn't even blink, and took the seat at the head of the table. Her eyes narrowed. "That's for the HOA president." I smiled, just enough to hurt. "I know," I said, pulling out my ID and placing it on the table next to the official deed packet. Karen leaned over to read it. That's when the color drained from her face. You could hear her breathing shift, sharp, shallow. Karen leaned closer to the document like her eyes might betray her. But they hadn't. It was all there. My name, my title, my authority. I wasn't just a resident. I was the chair of the holding company that had quietly acquired the entire development. 5 months prior, including the HOA itself. Corporate restructuring, legal reshuffling, a few signatures here, a few buyouts there. It was clean, quiet, surgical. I looked up at her, still smiling. "I'm the majority stakeholder of Glenhaven. Residential Holdings," I said calmly. "Technically, that makes me your boss." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The boardroom was dead silent. No one knew where to look. It was poetic. Karen had spent the last week bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen, spreading rumors. That I was some divorced athlete's girlfriend, a charity case, a temporary tenant. Now, the truth sat across from her in a tailored black suit with initials stitched into the sleeve cuff. I didn't want this meeting to be about the slap, but when the board's vice chair hesitantly brought it up, the room shifted again. "Ms. Evans," he said carefully, "do you want to file a complaint?" Karen scoffed as if she were the victim. "I have no interest in a complaint," I said, "but I do have interest in how this HOA functions, and who speaks for it." Then I slid a file across the table. Inside, printouts of Karen's repeated violations, harassment complaints from other neighbors, photos, witness statements, even a background check that showed a nasty little restraining order from her last community. Karen's jaw twitched. Her little empire was crumbling, one smug brick at a time, and I hadn't even raised my voice. Karen didn't go down gracefully. People like her never do. She lunged for the folder like she could tear the truth apart with her bare hands, shredding paper and pride in one breath. "You think you can come in here and ruin my life?" she snapped, voice pitching into a screech. "This is my neighborhood." I tilted my head, calm as ever. "Funny, because I thought you just said I didn't belong here." She flinched, like the words hit harder than the slap she gave me. Round the table, board members shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. A few looked relieved, like maybe they'd been waiting for someone to put her in check for years. One of them, a retired fire chief named Mr. Hollis, cleared his throat. "Karen," he said, voice rough but steady, "I think it's best you step down from the board." Her head whipped toward him. "Excuse me? You've harassed a homeowner, violated at least 4 property codes, and you lied to the HOA about representing the block at that zoning meeting last month. I'm done covering for you." She stared at him like he'd betrayed her, then spun toward me, eyes blazing. "This is revenge. That's what this is. You couldn't handle a little pushback, so now you're throwing your money around to play queen." "Not queen," I said quietly. "Just owner." The silence after that was different. It was acceptance. Karen realized, for the first time, this wasn't going to end her way. "I'll sue," she snapped, snatching her purse and storming. "Out." I let her go, because I knew something she didn't. The lawsuit she was planning, her lawyer already worked for my firm, and that slap was just the beginning. 2 days later, she filed. I expected it. She needed to feel like she still had power. The lawsuit was laughable. Emotional distress, defamation, hostile restructuring. Her attorney, some mid-tier local guy, didn't even realize the firm handling her paperwork was one of our subsidiaries. It didn't matter. I wasn't worried about the court. I was thinking bigger. See, Karen had no idea what kind of woman I really was. She saw my skin and made assumptions. She saw my car and made accusations. She never once thought to look beneath the surface, never asked who I was before deciding what I deserved. So I decided to give her a front row seat. That Friday, I hosted a block-wide open house at my property. Casual invite, nothing flashy. I called it a welcome reception for myself, but really, it was a test. I wanted to see who would show up, who would still be whispering behind curtains, and who would come with questions or better, apologies. Karen didn't come, of course, but nearly everyone else did. Even Mr. Hollis, who brought a bottle of wine and said, "We've needed someone like you here for a long time." Neighbors trickled in, some shy, some curious, but every one of them got the same version of me, warm, open, and real. I didn't mention the lawsuit, didn't bring up the slap. I let my home speak for itself. Clean lines, community artwork, jazz humming through the garden speakers. And when people asked what I did for a living, I invest, I'd say with a smile, in places that forget what dignity looks like. That night, as the last guests left, I stepped out onto my balcony and saw Karen standing in her window, watching. She didn't wave, neither did I, but she knew. Everything was changing and she couldn't stop it. Karen tried to play nice after that. Not to me, never to me, but to everyone else. I started noticing her at more events, hovering just far enough to seem involved, but never close enough to apologize. She'd smile too wide at neighbors. Offer to organize block cleanups she never showed up for. She even tried baking cookies for the board, which someone later told me tasted like drywall and salt. It was pitiful, but I wasn't fooled. Karen wasn't sorry. Karen was scared, and when scared people get desperate, they start digging. A week later, I came home to find a letter taped to my door. Not in an envelope, not signed. Just 3 words in bold black marker, "We know everything." I didn't flinch, because the truth is, I've never hidden anything, but I had a feeling Karen was behind it. That weekend, a concerned citizen submitted a request to the HOA demanding a full audit of my property. Claims of improper zoning, suspicions about renovations, even a note about unlicensed staff on the premises. It was obvious what she was doing, trying to weaponize the same rules she used to bully her way through this neighborhood for years. But here's the twist. I wrote those rules. Literally. The original HOA bylaws were drafted by a firm I purchased 5 years ago, which meant every clause, every loophole, every safeguard, I knew it backwards and forwards. The audit was approved, of course. I didn't stop it. I welcomed it, because I knew what they'd find. Nothing. Every permit, every inspection, every background check, it was airtight. My home was more compliant than hers had ever been. So when Karen showed up outside my house that Tuesday, fake smiling with a clipboard in hand and a volunteer inspector trailing behind her, I just opened the gate, nodded, and said, "Come on, Denise." Karen strutted in like it was her moment, clipboard tight in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was hiding behind them. She barely looked at me as she passed, trailing her inspector like a show pony. He was polite, young, guy probably just following protocol, but clearly uneasy. I made sure to keep the energy warm, calm. I had nothing to hide. They checked everything. The entryway renovations, fully permitted. The greenhouse out back, solar certified, HOA approved 6 months prior. Even the guest house that Karen whispered was some kind of illegal business, zoned perfectly for auxiliary dwelling, complete with licensure for occasional private consulting. I watched her mood sour in real time, lip twitching, grip tightening on that little clipboard like it might rescue her from reality. And then they got to the staff quarters. It's funny, really. The part she seemed most eager to expose was the one that told the entire story, because when they opened the detached garage, converted years ago into high-end housing for my personal staff, they didn't find chaos or illegality. They found Ivy, my chief of operations, and her husband, Marcus, head of security, retired Marine, both in uniform, both with credentials. And Ivy was ready. She handed the inspector a file before he even asked. Insurance, permits, payroll, everything legal, everything clean. Karen was silent. I think she knew right then that the game had changed. The inspector turned to me after a quiet moment. "Everything's in order, Ms. Evans." I smiled. "Of course it is." As they left, I noticed Karen lagging behind. For the first time, she wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just said, "You keep coming." "For me, Karen, you're going to end up showing the whole neighborhood who you really are." And then I shut the gate behind her. It all came to a head the night of the HOA emergency meeting. Karen had called it herself, under the guise of restoring neighborhood order, her last gasp. The invite went out with an urgent tone, like she was trying to rally a village before a storm hit. And in a way only this time, she was the one in the path of it. I didn't need to go. But I did, because there are some things you need to say with your chest, and face to face. The meeting was held in the community rec center, folding chairs lined in a too-bright room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and paper agendas. Half the neighborhood showed up. Karen stood at the front, flanked by 2 board members who looked more nervous than loyal. She wasted no time. "In recent months," she began with her best Stepford smile, "this community has seen disruption, manipulation, takeover by someone who doesn't understand our values." She meant me, of course. Everyone knew it. "And I believe," she continued, "that we need to vote on whether this individual should continue to have any say in our future." Murmurs rippled. Some heads turned toward me. Others just looked down. I stood, not rushed, not angry, just tired of letting her control the room. "If you want to vote on something," I said, "let's vote on the truth." I pulled a small clicker from my bag, pressed it. The screen behind Karen flickered to life. First slide, the property deed, my name, my company. Second, Karen's slap, crystal clear, time-stamped. Third, a list of her code violations and complaints over the last 4 years, highlighted, documented, and verified. Fourth, a financial trail tying her to a private contracting firm that received kickbacks from HOA landscaping deals. The room was silent. Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She tried to speak. God, did she try. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on a dock, but the room wasn't listening anymore. No one was. Eyes flicked from the screen to her, then back again, calculating, embarrassed, stunned. It was like watching a magician get caught palming the card and still trying to finish the trick. This is out of context, she finally stammered, her voice cracking. Those contracts were approved by the board. They're legal. Legal, I said, stepping forward, isn't the same as ethical, and you didn't disclose any of those relationships. That's conflict of interest, Karen. A pause. Then, Hollis, the retired fire chief, the one she used to lean on for support, stood up. I moved to hold a vote of no confidence in Karen Monroe's position on this board, he said. And just like that, it started, hands raised, one by one. A clean sweep. Even the woman who used to host bunco nights with Karen didn't hesitate. The vote was unanimous. No more seat on the board, no more titles, no more clipboard power plays. Karen was done. She sat, down slowly, color draining from her face, eyes darting to anyone who might throw her a lifeline. No one did. She wasn't feared anymore, just pitied. And then came the final blow. As the HOA's majority stakeholder, I said, keeping my voice level, I'll be appointing an interim president until we elect new leadership. I turned to the audience, someone who values transparency and doesn't slap their neighbors. A few people chuckled. A few clapped. Karen stood, shoulders stiff, eyes wet, and walked out of the room. This time, no one followed her. Outside, the sky had turned dusky. Cool air, crickets starting up, and for the first time since moving in, I felt peace. The days that followed were quiet, eerily so at first. Karen stayed inside. Her porch, once a command center for gossip and passive-aggressive porch decor, now sat bare. No wind chimes, no flag, just a closed door and drawn blinds. She didn't even show up for trash day. It was like she vanished, and honestly, no one seemed to mind. I didn't throw a party, didn't strut down the street like I'd won something, because this wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming peace, reclaiming space. Word spread quickly, not just about the vote, but about everything. The slap, the truth behind the HOA deals. The fact that the woman Karen thought she could intimidate into silence was the one quietly holding all the cards, and the checkbook. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. The neighborhood changed. Folks started waving more, talking more. And Tiu, older woman from 2 doors down, knocked just to say thank you. Said she hadn't felt comfortable in years. Even the new family with the twins brought over banana bread and stayed to chat on my porch like we'd been friends forever. One evening, Mr. Hollis stopped by with a lawn chair and a beer. You didn't have to do all that, he said, settling in beside me. I did, I said, sipping my tea. Because people like her count on people like me staying quiet. He nodded. Well, we're glad you didn't. And I think that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's ever been told, directly or sideways, that they don't belong, that their money isn't enough, that their presence is a problem, that their voice is too loud, or not loud enough, and in the end, I didn't need to shout, I just had to stand and let the truth do the talking.